welcome to Dagon? Bacon? I don't, I don't know. It's another, it's an adaptation of a, what's the word? Based off H.P. Lovecraft. Yeah, it's on the screen right there. It's a faithful, interactive adaptation of H.P. Lovecraft's work, focused on story and atmosphere. You will not find difficult choices, action sequences, or inventory management here, and movement is limited to progressing through locations along with the plot. You know what?
I'm writing this under an appreciable mental strain, since by tonight I shall be no more.
Oh, let's click through. During the game, you will encounter interactive elements. Some of them will continue your journey, others reveal interesting facts about the original short story, its historical background, and the author. Some of the trivia is hidden. In order to find these secrets, focus your eyes and look for the Elder Sign. You can also access all the found facts later. They will be available in the main menu. I like how they have a Super Nintendo controller. That's awesome to me. Okay, so... Ooh. As to letters, my case is peculiar. I write such things exactly as easily and as rapidly as I would utter the same topics in conversation. Indeed, epistolary expression is with me, largely replacing conversation, as my condition of nervous prostration becomes more and more acute. I cannot bear to talk much now, and am becoming as silent as the spectator himself. My loquacity, I'm going to put some definitions in here, extends itself on paper. H.P. Lovecraft to Reinhard Kleiner, December 23rd, 1917. Throughout his life, Lovecraft penned about 100,000 letters to his friends and fans, out of which about 10% survive to this day, but his tendency to endless correspondence was a relatively late growth. In youth, I scarcely did any letter writing. Thanking anybody for a present was so much of an ordeal that I would rather have written a 250-line pastoral or a 20-page treatise on the... Treaty? On the rings of Saturn. Selected letters, 1929 to 1931, H.P. Lovecraft. Lovecraft would often skip meals to afford postage. Collections of his correspondence have been published in various books, and selected letters can be found online. Some readers consider them his most important legacy. Wow. Let's see, so I can't, like, walk. Okay. So let's see, is there any other, This game is really pretty, too. Okay, so I think I found everything I can.
Penniless, and at the end of my supply of the drug which alone makes life endurable, I can bear the torture no longer, and shall cast myself from this garret window into the squalid street below. Do not think from my slavery to morphine that I am a weakling or a degenerate. When you have read these hastily scrawled pages, you may guess, though never fully realize, why it is that I must have forgetfulness or death.
Let's see. Morphine. Morphine entered into use in the 19th century and was routinely administered to treat severe pain during the American Civil War and World War I. It was also sold without restrictions until 1914. Morphine became more popular after the invention, put that out of the way, of the hypodermic syringe around 1854. Frederick Saturner, who first isolated the substance, originally named it morphium after Morpheus, the Greek god associated with dreams. At the time when Dagon was published, morphine abuse, known as soldier's disease, already posed a big problem in the United States. Huh. Didn't miss anything else.
It was in one of the most open and least frequented parts of the broad Pacific that the packet of which I was supercargo fell a victim to the German sea raider.
Keeps putting the mouse back in the center. Go away. Lovecraft and the Great War. Dagon was written around a month after the United States entered World War I. Lovecraft was actively interested in its course. He composed many poems in which he gave encouragement to soldiers and commented on the events unfolding in Europe. He tried to enlist in the army, which he mentions in one of the letters to Reinhard Kleiner. Some time ago, impressed by my entire uselessness in the world, I resolved to attempt enlistment despite my almost invalid condition. I argued that if I chose a regiment soon to depart for France, my sheer nervous force, which is not inconsiderable, might sustain me till a bullet or piece of shrapnel could more conclusively and effectively dispose of me. letters to Reinhard Kleiner, H.P. Lovecraft. But even though he passed the physical exam, his mother prevented him from going to the war. She has threatened to go to any lengths, legal or otherwise, if I do not reveal all the ills which unfit me for the army. I am Providence, the life and times of H.P. Lovecraft, S.T. Joshi. Huh. I didn't actually realize that he was alive during World War I. I thought he was much farther back than that, if I'm being honest. Any more secrets over here? No. Oh, cannon fire.
The Great War was then at its very beginning.
Oh, look at that
and
water.
The ocean forces of the Hun had not
That's
completely
nice.
sunk to their later degradation. So that our vessel was made a legitimate prize, whilst we of her crew were treated with all the fairness and consideration due us as naval prisoners.
This is fascinating. It's not necessarily the most spooky. Ooh, the Huns. The Huns were Central Asian nomads who established a dominion in Europe and invaded the Roman Empire in the 5th century AD. They were known as brutal, deadly warriors and masters of quick raids who also developed powerful composite bows, lassos, and early siege weapons. During World War I, the British used the word Hun as a synonym for Germans, in order to emphasize their brutality. However, the term originated when the German Emperor Wilhelm II gave a speech to his troops on 27th of July, 1900, before they embarked to China. Should you encounter the enemy, he will be defeated. No quarter will be given. Prisoners will not be taken. Whoever falls into your hands is forfeited. Just as a thousand years ago the Huns under their king Attila made a name for themselves, one that even today makes them seem mighty in history and legend, may the name German be affirmed by you in such a way in China that no Chinese will ever again dare to look cross-eyed at a German. The refusal to take prisoners was a clear breach of the laws and customs of war adopted during the First Hague Convention of 1899.
So liberal, indeed, was the discipline of our captors, that 5 days after we were taken, I managed to escape alone, in a small boat, with water and provisions for a good length of time.
Is there another secret hidden here? Might not be on this one. Oh.
When I finally found myself adrift and free, I had but little idea of my surroundings. Never a competent navigator, I could only guess vaguely by the sun and stars that I was somewhat south of the equator. Of the longitude, I knew nothing, and no island or coastline was in sight.
This sounds like one of the worst things ever. Any hidden elder signs in the stars? No. I think we're starting to get into the main meat of it.
Fair, and for uncounted days I drifted aimlessly beneath the scorching sun, waiting either for some passing ship or to be cast on the shores of some habitable land.
Oh, I just saw it. Dang it.
But neither ship nor land appeared,
Missed
and I
it.
began to despair in my solitude upon the heaving vastness of unbroken blue.
Man.
The change happened whilst I slept.
What?
Its details I shall never know, for my slumber, though troubled and dream-infested, was continuous.
What the fuck? What the fuck?
When at last I awoke, it was to discover myself half sucked into a slimy expanse of hellish black mire, which extended about me in monotonous undulations as far as I could see, and in which my boat lay grounded some distance away. Though one might well imagine that my first sensation would be of wonder at so prodigious and unexpected a transformation of scenery, I was in reality more horrified than astonished. For there was in the air, and in the rotting soil, a sinister quality which chilled me to the very core. The region was putrid with the carcasses of decaying fish, and of other, less describable things which I saw protruding from the nasty mud of the unending plain. Perhaps I should not hope to convey in mere words the unutterable hideousness that can dwell in absolute silence and barren immensity. There was nothing within hearing, and nothing in sight, save a vast reach of black slime. Yet the very completeness of the stillness and the homogeneity of the landscape oppressed me with a nauseating fear. The sun was blazing down from a sky which seemed to me almost black in its cloudless cruelty, as though reflecting the inky marsh beneath my feet.
Origins of Dagon. Dagon seems to be inspired by Fishhead, a short novel by Irvin S. Cobb about unnatural affinities between a hybrid idiot and the strange fish of an isolated lake. Supernatural horror in literature, H.P. Lovecraft. In Lovecraft's dream about a strange island emerging from the ocean and him crawling in the ooze that covered its surface. I dreamed that whole hideous crawl, and can yet feel the ooze sucking me down. In Defense of Dagon, H.P. Lovecraft. Lovecraft's interest in the topic stemmed from his aversion to fish and sea smells. In his own words, I have hated fish and feared the sea and everything connected with it since I was 2 years old, but I cannot recall what earlier experience gave me such a profound and lasting aversion to the sea and seafood. The Dweller in Darkness, Lovecraft, 1927, by Donald Wandre. Okay. Yeah, I hate that noise.
As I crawled into the stranded boat, I realized that only one theory could explain my position.
That's a big undulating mold pile.
Through some unprecedented volcanic upheaval, a portion of the ocean floor must have been thrown to the surface, exposing regions for which innumerable millions of years had lain hidden under unfathomable watery depths. So great was the extent of the new land which had risen beneath me that I could not detect the faintest noise of the surging ocean, straining my ears as I might, nor were there any seafowl to prey upon the dead things.
Mystery of volcanic islands. Volcanic eruptions sometimes result in the creation of islands. Most of them are transient and erode after some time, but some prove permanent. The floating pumice, porous rock created when superheated, pressurized rock is ejected from a volcano, can move across long distances and transport barnacles and macroalgae that cling to it. In 2001, rafts of pumice created during the eruption of a volcano near Tonga, Polynesia, eventually reach Australia. That's kind of neat.
For several hours I sat thinking or brooding in the boat, which lay upon its side and afforded a slight shade as the sun moved across the heavens. As the day progressed, the ground lost some of its stickiness and seemed likely to dry sufficiently for traveling purposes in a short time. That night I slept but little, and the next day I made for myself a pack containing food and water, preparatory to an overland journey in search of the vanished sea and possible rescue.
I don't like that. I don't like that at all.
On the third morning, I found the soil dry enough to walk upon with ease. The odor of the fish was maddening, but I was too much concerned with graver things to mind so slight an evil, and set out boldly for an unknown goal.
I still hate it. I hate squishy, slurpy.
All day I forged steadily westward, guided by a faraway hummock which rose higher than any other elevation on the rolling desert.
Hold on. We're not going to talk about these definitely not normal fucking looking things. No, just me. Okay. That's just a whale. That was such a tame reaction. Hate it. Ooh.
That night I encamped, and on the following day still travelled toward the hummock, though that object seemed scarcely nearer than when I had first espied it.
The horrors of the ocean. The creator of the Cthulhu mythos and the fictional underwater city of Retelling, I don't know, was convinced that life could not exist at the bottom of the ocean because the water pressure would make it uninhabitable. Today we know that the darkest depths of the ocean are home to many peculiar organisms. The deepest dwelling fish we have discovered so far, the Mariana snailfish, can live about 8,000 meters, more than 26,000 feet, below the ocean's surface, in never-ending darkness and at hellishly crushing pressures, hundreds of times stronger than those found at sea level. Upon glancing at the modern photo of deep-sea creatures, such as the anglerfish, the fangtooth, or the viperfish, in their truly Lovecraftian characteristics, it's hard not to find some irony in this. Through the disgusting slop we go. We've gotten to it.
I attained the base of the mound, which turned out to be much higher than it had appeared from a distance. An intervening valley setting it out in sharp relief from the general surface. Too weary to ascend, I slept in the shadow of the hill. I know not why my dreams were so wild that night.
The mountain's
The
Cthulhu.
waning and fantastically gibbous moon had risen far above the eastern plain. I was awake in a cold perspiration, determined to sleep no more. Such visions as I had experienced were too much for me to endure again, and in the glow of the moon I saw how unwise I had been to travel by day. Without the glare of the parching sun, my journey would have cost me less energy. Indeed, I now felt quite able to perform the ascent which had deterred me at sunset.
Yeah, generally.
Picking up my pack, I started for the crest of the eminence.
Generally, traveling during the day is, what's the word? Traveling by day, if it's hot, is generally not the greatest idea. Anyway, the loner. Contrary to popular opinion, Lovecraft was not an ever-frowning, eccentric, grumpy loner. He considered himself to be a person who appreciated humor. Moreover, he would often meet with friends in his apartment or at various cafes in Brooklyn and Manhattan. At times, his social life was so intensive, his work would suffer for months. There was a point when he finally decided he needed to put an end to daily meetings and loitering in New York cafeterias and resorted to hiding at home when reading with the main room light turned off, pretending he wasn't there whenever a friend knocked on his door. He also had another method of deterring his guests, which involved greeting them in a bathrobe, with an unmade bed visible in the background and piles of papers scattered across the floor. Interesting. So he was a socialite, but he realized he needed...
The unbroken monotony of the rolling flame was a source of vague horror to me.
He said that, or he got so busy with people that he stopped working, so he was like, alright, time to fix this by going the opposite extreme.
But I think my horror was greater when I gained the summit of the mound and looked down the other side into an immeasurable pit or canyon, whose black recesses the moon had not yet soared high enough to illumine.
Oh, that's concerning.
I felt myself on the edge of the world, peering over the rim into a fathomless chaos of eternal night.
I don't like
Through
that.
my terror ran curious reminiscences of Paradise Lost, and of Satan's hideous climb through the unfashioned realms of darkness. As the moon climbed higher in the sky, I began to see that the slopes of the valley were not quite so perpendicular as I had imagined. Ledges and outcroppings of rock afforded fairly easy footholds for a descent, whilst after a drop of only a few hundred feet, the declivity became very gradual.
So fascinating.
Urged on by an impulse which I cannot definitely analyze, I scrambled with difficulty down the rocks and stood on the gentler slope beneath, gazing into the Stygian deeps where no light had yet penetrated. All at once, my attention was captured by a vast and singular object on the opposite slope, which rose steeply about 100 yards ahead of me. An object that gleamed whitely in the newly bestowed rays of the ascending moon.
Still hate that noise.
That it was merely a gigantic piece of stone, I soon assured myself. But I was conscious of a distinct impression that its contour and position were not altogether the work of nature. A closer scrutiny filled me with sensations I cannot express. For despite its enormous magnitude, and its position in an abyss which had yawned at the bottom of the sea since the world was young, I perceived beyond a doubt that the strange object was a well-shaped monolith, whose massive bulk had known the workmanship and perhaps the worship of living and thinking creatures. Dazed and frightened, yet not without a certain thrill of the scientist's or archaeologist's delight, I examined my surroundings more closely.
Whoa.
The moon, now near the zenith, shone weirdly and vividly above the towering steeps that hemmed in the chasm, and revealed the fact that a far-flung body of water flowed at the bottom, winding out of sight in both directions and almost lapping my feet as I stood on the slope. A across the chasm, the wavelets washed the base of the Cyclopean monolith, on whose surface I could now trace both inscriptions and crude sculptures.
That's some spooky looking shit. I ain't about it.
The writing was in a system of hieroglyphics unknown to me and unlike anything I'd ever seen in books, consisting for the most part of conventionalized aquatic symbols such as fishes, eels, octopi, crustaceans, mollusks, whales, and the like. Several characters obviously represented marine things which are unknown to the modern world, but whose decomposing forms I had observed on the ocean-risen plain. It was the pictorial carving, however, that did most to hold me spellbound.
Aha. Storytelling methods. Dagon contains many themes and storytelling methods that Lovecraft developed in his later works, such as telling the story through carvings at the Mountains of Madness, the Nameless City, journals and characters' notes, The Shadow Out of Time, and The Haunter of the Dark, islands emerging from the ocean, The Call of Cthulhu, or fictional beings and deities based on real events and mythologies, Nego in The Whispers of Darkness. Whisperer in Darkness. It's also considered the origin of the popular Cthulhu mythos. Some of Lovecraft's other stories also conclude in a manner similar to Dagon, but let's skip the details in order not to spoil the ending. I'm fascinated.
Visible across the intervening
It's very
water,
cool.
on account of their enormous size, were an array of bas-reliefs whose subjects would have excited the envy of a Dore.
I don't know what
I
a Dore
think that
is
these
either.
things were supposed to depict men, at least a certain sort of men, though the creatures were shown disporting like fishes in the waters of some marine grotto, or paying homage at some monolithic shrine which appeared to be under the waves as well. Of their faces and forms I dare not speak in detail, for the mere remembrance makes me grow faint, grotesque beyond the imagination of a Poe or a Bulwer. They were damnably human in general outline, despite webbed hands and feet, shockingly wide and flabby lips, glassy, bulging eyes, and other features less pleasant to recall. Curiously enough, they seemed to have been chiseled badly out of proportion with their scenic background, for one of the creatures was shown in the act of killing a whale, represented as but little larger than himself. I remarked, as I say, their grotesqueness and strange size, but in a moment decided that they were merely the imaginary gods of some primitive fishing or seafaring tribe. Some tribe whose last descendant had perished eras before the first ancestor of the Piltdown or Neanderthal man was born.
Oh, that was really hiding from me. Lovecraft would often use the latest scientific discoveries as inspiration for his works. He would even update his stories at the last moment in order to make sure they reflected their latest breakthroughs. Unfortunately, this method was not without its flaws. After Lovecraft's death, the Piltdown Man discovery mentioned in Dagon turned out to be a paleanthropological I got it now, fraud. In 1912, Charles Dawson, an amateur archaeologist, announced that he had discovered the missing link between ape and man, the fossilized remains of a previously unknown early human. Years later, they turned out to be a forgery, but by that point the fraud had already managed to negatively affect the early research on human evolution. In the year when the discovery took place, the majority of the scientific community believed Dawson indeed found the missing link. In 1953, Time magazine published evidence proving that Dawson was a con man. It turned out that the fossil of the previously unknown early human consisted of a human skull, the jaw of an orangutan, and chimpanzee teeth. Huh.
Awestruck at this unexpected glimpse into a past beyond the conception of the most daring anthropologist, I stood musing as the moon cast queer reflections on the silent channel before me. Then, suddenly,
excuse
I
me?
saw it. With only a slight churning to mark its rise to the surface,
Oh.
the thing slid into view above the dark headquarters.
Oh no. Oh fuck. Okay, hi there.
Loathsome, it darted like a stupendous monster of nightmares to the monolith, about which it flung its gigantic scaly arms, while it bowed its hideous head and gave vent to certain measured sounds.
This went from 0 to 11 real fucking quick.
I think I went mad then. Of my frantic ascent of the sloping cliff, and of my delirious journey back to the stranded boat, I remember little. I believe I sang a great deal and laughed oddly when I was unable to sing. I have indistinct recollections of a great storm sometime after I reached the boat. At any rate, I know that I heard pearls of thunder and other tones which nature utters only in her wildest moods. When I came out of the shadows, I was in
Oh.
a San Francisco hospital, brought thither by the captain of the American ship which had picked up my boat in mid-ocean. In my delirium, I had said much, but found my words had been given scant attention. Of any land upheaval in the Pacific, my rescuers knew nothing, nor did I deem it necessary to insist upon a thing which I knew they could not believe.
The atheist. Lovecraft considered himself an atheist and absolute materialist, which he attributed partly to his early childhood interest in astronomy and science in general. In his own words, I am indeed an absolute materialist so far as actual belief goes, with not a shred of credence in any form of supernaturalism, religion, spiritualism, transcendentalism, metempsychosis, or immortality. All I say is that I think it is damned unlikely that anything like a central cosmic will, a spirit world, or an eternal survival of personality exist. They are the most preposterous and unjustified of all the guesses which can be made about the universe. And I am not enough of a hair-splitter to pretend that I don't regard them as errant and negligible moonshine. In theory, I am an agnostic, but pending the appearance of a radical evidence, I must be classed practically and provisionally as an atheist. Sources: Against Religion, The Atheist Writings of H.P. Lovecraft, H.P. Lovecraft. Mythos, The Myths and Tales of H.P. Lovecraft and Robert E. Howard by H.P. Lovecraft and Robert E. Howard.
Once I sought out a celebrated ethnologist and amused him with peculiar questions regarding the ancient Philistine legend of Dagon, the fish god.
Dagon was, we're doing this again, I see, was the main deity of the Philistines, worshipped throughout the Middle East as the ancient god of fertility and crops. In Hebrew, the word Dagon was a common noun for grain. The rulers of Akkad, Mesopotamia, chose him as the patron saint of their war conquests. He also appeared as the judge of the dead in an Assyrian poem and an underworld prison warder in one of the Babylonian texts. He is often mistakenly taken for a fish god due to the wrong interpretation of his name, as in Hebrew the word dag means fish. Dag? I don't know. In H.P. Lovecraft's work, Dagon is an underwater deity ruling over the deep ones, a humanoid race with fish traits that reside in the oceans. He is worshipped by a secret cult called the Esoteric Order of Dagon. What am I looking for here? Oh, there we go. Jesus Christ, man. Why?
Perceiving that he was
What?
hopelessly conventional,
I am recording.
press my inquiries.
Perish. August Derleth and the Cthulhu Mythos. August Derleth was an American writer and anthologist. He also befriended Lovecraft and published many of his works through his company, Arkham House. Although he greatly contributed to the popularization of the author's works after his death, he is surrounded by numerous controversies. One of his most questionable decisions involved introducing the good versus evil doctrine. Derleth was a devout Catholic to the Cthulhu mythos, which contrasted with Lovecraft's view of the world and his approach to cosmic horror. As a result, the author's works are often misunderstood and misrepresented in today's culture. It is also worth noting that Lovecraft was never really interested in creating a mythology, and the term Cthulhu mythos was coined by Derleth after the author left the mortal plane. I see. Is that why there's just a Necronomicon hanging out on Lovecraft's desk? Whoa, what just happened? Okay, let's try that again. There we go. The scientist. These days, the word scientist is a widely accepted term, but at the time Dagon was published, it was subject to a wide debate. After the author used it in the story, critics pointed out that man of science was a more appropriate term to employ. He admitted, in defense of Dagon, that if Dagon were to be reprinted, he would indeed use the phrase they suggested. Scientist was coined as an analog to artist, to be used when referring to those studying different branches of science. Yet in the 19th and early 20th century, scientific researchers in Great Britain and the United States were of the opinion that man of science, resembling the term man of letters, was the only proper choice. Among other things, it was gender-specific, indicating that science was an endeavor to be pursued by only one sex. The term scientist became more accepted only after World War II, and man of science started fading into obscurity as an old-fashioned synonym. I'm learning a lot about the olden times of less than a century ago. And we're back at the desk.
Especially when the moon is gibbous and waning, but I see the thing.
Please don't make me see the thing again.
I tried morphine, but the drug has given only transient surcease, and has drawn me into its clutches as a hopeless slave. So now, I am to end it all, having written a full account for the information or the contemptuous amusement of my fellow men.
Lovecraft on tobacco and alcohol. Lovecraft hated tobacco. Even though he used to smoke when he was 12 in order to look and feel like an adult, in his correspondence with friend Reinhard Kleiner, he claims that he quit as soon as he started wearing long pants. He also had a very strong opinion about alcohol, as evidenced by his letter to Zealia Brown, dated 13th February of 1928. As for the matter of drinking, I have never tasted intoxicating liquor and never intend to, having a strong aesthetic disgust at anything which blunts or coarsens the delicate natural equipoise, I don't fucking know, of the evolved human intellect and imagination. Drinking excited my personal repugnance, hence I don't drink, let the herd do what they will. I am rather in favor of prohibition, the prohibition of any one antisocial force as well as any other. Source: The Spirit of Revision, Lovecraft's letter to Zealia Brown, Reed Bishop. H.P. Lovecraft, Sean Branney, and Andrew Lehman, S.T. Joshi. Every time. Okay.
Often, I ask myself if it could not all have been a pure phantasm, a mere freak of fever, as I lay sun-stricken and raving in the open boat after my escape from the German man of war. This I ask myself, but ever does there come before me a hideously vivid vision in reply. I cannot think of the deep sea without shuddering at the nameless things that may at this very moment be crawling and floundering on its slimy bed, worshipping their ancient
No, I
stone
don't like that.
idols,
Oh, I don't like that.
carving their own
Oh,
detestable
God, I don't like
likenesses
that.
on submarine obelisks of water-soaked granite. I dream of a day when they may rise above the billows to drag down into their reeking talons the remnants of puny, war-exhausted mankind. Of a day when the land shall sink and the dark ocean shall ascend amidst universal pandemonium.
That's That's horrifying. Ooh.
The end is near. I hear a noise at the door, as of some immense slippery body lumbering against it.
Yeah, how about no? I don't wanna. I'm gonna be completely honest with you guys. I don't like it.
It shall not find me. God, that hand.
Don't worry, it's probably your concerned
The
neighbor.
window. The window.
Because you're high as shit on morphine right now. Ah, yes. Running for my life, but I still have time to look for clues. And he's dead. Thank you for playing. We hope you enjoyed immersing yourself in our little pool of cosmic horror. We would appreciate it if you took a moment to rate Dagon and check out our other games and DLCs. Well, that was really cool. I don't know much about H.P. Lovecraft personally or his writing, but that was a nice little dip into the storytelling that he has, and it was a really fun little experience. Not necessarily the most scary, but it was very spooky, which counts. That's all I'm concerned with. And so I think that'll do it good for today's episode. So thank you guys for watching. Leave a like down below if you liked it. Comment if you have any tips, tricks, suggestions, any other videos you want to see, any other games you want me to play. If you'd like me to check out the DLCs for this game, feel free to leave a comment down below. Share this video around, subscribe if you haven't already, and ring that notification bell. And now I have a few social media accounts active for the channel, so I will be sharing those in the description as well. Feel free to check those out. I'm going to be trying to be a little more active in posting content on there and spreading the channel around as many ways as I can. That'll do it for this episode, everyone. See you next time.